After spending about an hour today looking into the brand new Test Track, I have decided to make my video this week on Test Track 3.0 and my reasoning of why it's the best Test Track. Now, sure, I did not get to go on Test Track 3.0. As I just said, it opened today, as of the day that I'm recording this. It is a brand new ride at Disney World in Epcot. But I have been on Test Track 2.0, and I wanted to kind of compare both of those. Now, I'll bring up Test Track 1.0 for a minute here, but Test Track 1.0 is so drastically different than 2 and 3. In fact, each version of Test Track is so different from the last, which I think is an interesting strength of this ride. Every single time Disney announces a new Test Track, which, I mean, we're only on 3.0, but still, it's happened a lot, it's like we're getting a brand new ride because in many ways, we are. Sure, it might be the exact same track layout, but what they do with that track layout is very different. Sometimes they'll increase the speeds, it seems. Sometimes they'll just re-theme everything, or both usually. Now, Test Track 1.0 is one of those really interesting rides because it lives up to the name of Test Track. It's not exactly futuristic like we know it to be today and what we associate with Test Track. It was just a simple test track where you sat in a car as if you were the crash test dummy. And the futuristic elements just weren't there. You just kind of rode around, you brake check, you do all these other things with your car. It was a fine enough thrill ride. It was nothing really more. And then came Test Track 2.0. Now, Test Track 2.0 is the version that I got on when I went to Disney World my one and only time in 2019. And for many people my age, this was probably their test track. This was probably the test track that they grew up with. For a lot of people, honestly, it seems like the one that everybody kind of remembers is Test Track 2.0, since it was there for over 10 years. In fact, 13 years. It came out in 2012. Test Track 2.0. Was it actually good? Now, honestly, when I got on Test Track 2.0, I was kind of disappointed, and I'll explain why. I am from California, and as I've said many times on this channel, I've been to Disneyland a lot, as well as Disney's California Adventure. So when I rode Test Track, I realized that they took the Test Track, parts and made that into Radiator Springs Racer. And Radiator Springs is a far superior ride in my opinion, but I still appreciated Test Track. I was just let down because I forgot when I got on the ride, and started riding it, I had forgotten how much Disney had been inspired by Test Track to make the Radiator Springs ride. Now, honestly, taking away that bias and everything, Test Track 2.0, it was a fine enough ride. It had a little bit more theming, and it was presented by Chevrolet. They were the sponsors, and this would become, I think now, the big thing about Test Track is a sponsor will, be there sponsoring the ride, and then you will have a theme with that sponsor and what they want to tell you about their car company. For Chevrolet, it seemed to be very futuristic-y. Everything there looked very, very science fiction-y, techno, like very weirdly neon. And for most of the ride, you ride in dark rooms with neon forests, which is kind of weird. It looks very, very odd, but kind of cool. Now, the ride was a fine enough thrill ride and all. Its theming was okay. It could have been worked on a little bit better. The queue was pretty cool, and I guess it was an interesting enough ride. One of my most hated parts of the ride, though, I have to say, was the customizable car. Because the customizable car, at the end of the day, did not contribute anything to your ride. It was just simply something fun to do, and that fun thing to do actually held up the line at Test Track, making the queue so much more longer. But today we got Test Track 3.0, and it looked interesting when they were promoting this stuff a few weeks ago. The Imagineers were finally putting out some stuff on social media to show us what this ride will look like. And it looks really, really good. Test Track 3.0 is sponsored and, presented by General Motors. And I have to say, General Motors and Disney have put a lot of time and effort into this thing. It's very clear because they've plussed up this ride in seemingly every way that they could. from the queue, you have a much cooler queue in my opinion. Sure, you don't have like the deconstructed car thing, but you have a very sleek and nice queue. The exterior itself of Test Track looks a lot better too now. It just looks better when you're approaching it, when you're in the queue. It's all a lot nicer. And then you get to the ride. The ride itself is very, very sleek. Now, the thing about Test Track that is kind of sort of diminishing or hindering it is it's all indoors in dark spaces. So they have to rely on really fun lighting to make this ride vibrant and everything. And in this Test Track 3.0, that is used to the best possible ways. They've reworked basically every element of this ride. A lot of the dead space of 2.0 has now become a parking, or not parking garage, but just a normal garage that you go through. You see some EV stuff. In fact, going back to the queue for a moment, when you're in the queue, you get a lot of informational stuff. That entire room, that massive room where you would go and build your virtual car, that is now a little like sort of mini museum giving you General Motors pitch on their new vehicles and how they promote sustainability and everything. But back to the ride. The ride itself does have, some dark spots that has to, use the lighting in a fun way, but the lighting is used in a very interesting way that just feels brighter and better. There are some cool effects, especially this one that you're seeing here with like all the lights in the city buildings. This is a really neat effect, and once they showed it, the Imagineers, a few weeks back, it really reminded me of the Main Street Electrical Parade in a few ways of how they've constructed this. It looks really, really reminiscent of that. And the rest of the ride, there's some dead space here and there, but there's also great lighting fixtures and everything, and they're trying to make it feel better than whatever the Test Track 2.0 was. Because to be honest, when I was riding around on Test Track 2.0, I thought to myself, like, what is this? Like, we're going through neon synth wavy looking backgrounds, and it kind of looked cool, but it also was obscure and weird and strange. Now, once you get to the part on Test Track 3.0 where you have all this beautiful scenery of these trees, this I think is the best strength of the ride. Sure, the cool light effects and going through a garage is really refreshing compared to 2.0 where you actually have practical physical sets and some virtual effects. That is really cool. But once you get here into these tall foresty trees and such, you have a very elevated experience here, I think, with just theming and atmosphere and everything like that. This part works so much better for me. And then of course there's the grand finale, but leading up to the grand finale is a jaw-dropping moment that if you go and search Test Track on YouTube or really wherever, a lot of images will pop up with this really massive scene, we should say, before the launch out into the real world. And this right here is really cool. So we go away from the semi-truck, and then we get to see a very well lit area that, instead of just saying like sustainability and whatever the old Chevrolet ones said, we're getting to see more of their model cars, which is something I actually appreciate about Test Track 3.0. We get to see a lot of General Motors cars and vehicles on display, very futuristic ones, not ones that we've seen before, possibly future models, which is really neat. And then you turn a corner and you are in this room with this insanely massive screen that takes up the entire room, and I think it's cool and beneficial and works here. The screen is supposed to show us this, futuristic city of sorts. We could say a Tomorrowland, hopefully a new Tomorrowland. Basically the idea of a Tomorrowland here is showcased, but with General Motors vehicles. It reminds me of Coruscant and Tomorrowland weirdly mixed together. It did feel like Coruscant with all these like flying cars and everything moving around in the air and all that sort of deal. This part of the ride is just insane. It's gorgeous. It's crazy how they could pull this off, and it's probably the most expensive part of the ride. And it actually works better than the old launch where you would just turn a corner, see a bright, shining light at the end of the tunnel, which was, you know, the bright outside world, or if you rode it at night, then it was just darkness down there. That was kind of lame in Test Track 2.0. Here we have something where, you know, the doors open after you're ready to go, but you turn that corner, you get like a few seconds there to absorb the massive screen and what it's playing for you, and then you shoot out, and then you do your final little race test thing. And it seems from the videos that they have upped the speed on this thing. I could be totally wrong, but it seems like they've upped the speed and definitely the steepness of that turn. That turn is very, very, very steep, and it's interesting how they played it there. It looks like you're gonna just like fall off the track, like you're getting really, really close to the track, and then your ride is over. But the thing that I really appreciate about this, you know, aside from an incredible queue, they have an incredible exiting queue. General Motors actually set up a miniature museum of sorts to showcase their vehicles that you would see on the road. And I think they have like a spot that they'll probably put like a futuristic model in here, but it is a very spacious museum. And before you even get to there, you get to this like really strange room where there's like this massive circle that's lit up and you can stand in the middle of it. And it's a very interesting sort of a room, and you guys are seeing all the footage here. I don't really know how to explain this thing, but it is pretty cool. It's interesting. And then you turn this corner to exit the ride and you see a massive display of these a very spacious room with the cars there. You can walk up to the cars, you can take pictures with the cars, and hopefully this footage that I'm showing you is good enough. I left the links down in the description to go and support these people, the footage I'm using. But it looks just really cool. Having a little mini museum here at the very end of the ride is really a neat touch that I think is greatly needed for this type of ride. When you're trying to showcase, you know, your brand and showcase the futuristic capabilities of it, if you can actually put some real cars that we know and are familiar with, it creates like a cool photo op here. It's a very cool theme parky thing to do. And sure, it does lengthen the exiting queue, but I think it's a really cool plus and benefit of this ride. Now, I will say something about the queue before I end this video, which I think I kind of touched on. By eliminating that entire virtual build your car and just making it a spacious area with some, like, I don't know, plaques and stuff saying, oh, this is what General Motors strives to do with their sustainability and everything in their cars, that I think will make this test track a lot smoother to get through, like a lot smoother queue line time. Sure, it'll probably still be a crazy wait, but I'm sure over time it'll be a much more digestible wait, and you're not going to have to wait for 5 whole minutes packing 40 people in just to get to the other side of the queue. I don't really think it was an effective choice that they did back in the day, and I don't really think it was a beneficial thing. So to get rid of that entire room, or to rehaul that entire room and get rid of the virtual thing that took up so much time, I think it was a smart decision by Disney. So I want to know what you guys think about the brand new Test Track 3.0. I think it's really great. I just wanted to explain, you know, what I enjoyed about it. You know, Test Track 1.0 was a very interesting ride. It was a very sort of old and rustic ride that kind of in many ways to me seemed like it was trying to capitalize on the thrill in a way of maybe an Indiana Jones type, but do its own unique thing. And you know what? It was an iconic enough ride that they got a revamp, and it's not like Test Track 2.0 was awful. It was just deeply outdated and needed a new sort of aesthetic and a new facelift, a new refurbishment that would rehaul and transform the whole ride into something much better. And they have finally done that with General Motors. I think a lot of the people in the parks community and a lot of fans have been saying for a long time that Disney should have electric vehicles in this ride. That's the future, or I guess it was the future like 5 years ago. I guess it still kind of is now today, but it would have been cooler to have this about 5 years ago. A while back would have been nice, but at least they're finally getting around to it. But Anyways, what do you guys think about the brand new Test Track 3.0? Do you guys love it? Do you guys love the new queue? Do you guys love the exit queue? Do you guys like the ride? Do you guys think it's a waste of time? And with that being said, I'll be going, but come back next week as we're going to talk about my trip to the White House and what I think about the White House as a tourist spot. And then after that, we're going to talk about Jaws, because Jaws did turn 50. And actually this week I was going to make a video on Jaws, but I ended up making this because this is more topical than talking about the Jaws ride and the Jaws film legacy. I can always push Jaws down a little bit more, but I wanted to talk about Test Track, and I hope you've enjoyed. So with that being said, peace out. See you guys next week.